And Brad, as moderator, just to let you know, it looks like we have maybe 6 people viewing at this point too. So
well, thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and sorry for the technical details that delayed our start, but we're gathered here today to talk about the recent GOA Summit and Connect events in Albuquerque, and we've got esteemed guests, Rich Hill from Compass and Nail, and Dana Davis from the Summit Hut, and of course Jeff O'Keefe and I are from New Normal Consulting. So thanks for tuning in here. I just wanted to get started here. I think we could all dive in and just give a who are we and why are we here, an introduction. I mean, each of us has a long and varied history with Grassroots, even some of us since prior to Grassroots, when it was called something else. So, Dana, if you don't mind if I put you on the spot and let you introduce yourself and go from there.
Sure. I'm Dana Davis, and I'm co-owner of the Summit Hut. My husband, Jeremy, and I purchased the Summit Hut from Dave Baker about 5.5 years ago. So we had a very successful transition, and a lot of people ask if we still see Dave, and I do still go hiking with Dave and have dinner with him quite often. And sometimes he comes to crash the OR show. So I've worked at Summit Hut for 18 years now. So right out of college, I loved gear, loved getting outdoors, and it seemed like a great way to fund my habit by working at an outdoor store. So, and Summit Hut has been part of Grassroots since the very beginning. Dave Baker was one of the founders of ROI, as it was called, Retailers of the Outdoor Industry. And eventually the name of ROI changed to Grassroots Outdoor Alliance. And even way back before I started at Summit Hut, I was actually with another company called The Benchmark in Columbus, Ohio. So, so long history there in the outdoors, and that's about it.
Nice, Dan. Oh, we're gonna lose.
That's great. So, Rich, you've had a few different types of presence in the GOA show. So, why don't you introduce yourself now?
Wow, Rich Hill. I'm a partner in Compass and Nail, and we're an agency that works on people's multi-channel strategies and focus on loyalty and what causes loyalty and how we build it. And I don't even know where to start on history. I did chart this out recently, and I don't know how to shorten this story. Grassroots, or the original Dave Baker story. I think I was in the Marmot booth that first season where they were pitching it. And so yeah, I was there from, actually I think I signed it. I signed the agreement. I don't say this very often. For GOA, I signed the agreement at Marmot, I signed the agreement at Patagonia, and I signed the agreement at Prana. So
wow, nice.
Clearly clearly a supporter, and clearly have been on both sides of the conversation with the group. So yeah, that's the best summary I can give.
Great.
And Jeff, you also have a story to tell here.
Well, in fact, and by the way, Dana, I wish I could say I got out of college 18 years ago, but it was a little longer than that. And you're correct about Dave. In fact, I was working at Adventure 16 in Southern California back when it started, and one of our reps that we shared between California and Arizona, Phil Horn, suggested that I talk to Dave and we kind of compare notes. There was no internet at the time, so we were truly non-competing. Nobody had e-commerce, then. So we put together basically just a roundtable. We called it a retailers roundtable, and it wasn't a buying group yet. And we'd meet at the OR show and get a dinner room in the Hilton someplace and close the door. And there were probably 8 or 10 companies, Whole Earth, Great Outdoor Provision, Hudson Trail, Backwoods, A16 Summit Hut, of course, Skinny Skis, Ute Mountaineer at some point. Anyway, a group of people, and we were able to really open. It was tremendous. We were able to bring in P&Ls, training programs, outings programs, marketing plans. What does this cost you guys, and how do you do that? And liability insurance. We were able to talk about pretty much anything and everything. And then at one point, as Rich points out, and I might have been the guy who talked to Rich. I don't know. I was enlisted to go talk to Marmot and see if we could get a deal on a sleeping bag, and the rest was kind of history. So that was my retail side, and then when I ran Low Alpine and maybe Mountain Smoke as well, I think we were preferred vendors. Certainly with Low Alpine, we were preferred vendors. So I've tried to stay in touch with GOA over the years, and a big supporter. Brad, we can't hear you.
I had some side traffic here, so I turned myself on mute. But what I like about that, Jeff, too, is it's interesting that the event started primarily as an education event and an event about collegiality. And my experience in the GOA event is much more recent. I was a rep that was involved with it tangentially for years, but I was most active during the time when it was, reps weren't as prevalent at the event as they are today. So I didn't go at that time, and I've come into the event here later, and my main takeaway as I arrived was, this is a really collegial group, this is a really great event, and education is part and parcel of it. So it's interesting to hear where that DNA came from. I think that's excellent. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So this year's event, they've taken on a different flavor a little bit now that they've added Connect to the summit. So, you guys have been there quite a long time, and you've been there under a group of different hats over time. What did you think about this year's event? I mean, Rich, I'll start with you, because you've been there now under 3 major brands and under your own hat now too.
Well, it's interesting. I've been out. Yeah, we'll save the story. I've been out of the industry, kind of not attending events for a year. So to jump back in and really see the Grassroots, especially the Connect show with a new fresh set of eyes. And I haven't, I'm kind of a Ronin right now. I don't have any affiliation with any brand or retailer. And so it was for me, it was a very positive experience. And I think that the most obvious thing about it to me, the takeaway, was that it's an event built completely about the retailer experience. And then how that changes the entire dynamic of an event, of that show. And I thought it was incredibly powerful. I describe it as, because I got back and everyone was like, how was it? What was your experience? And I describe the Grassroots show as having amazing amount of utility, that it's super efficient. People get a lot of benefit and not a lot of kind of marching bands and fanfare, which is such a relief to me. And the comments I got back, because I was asking a lot of questions, and that the shift of control and the shift of focus from brands or from vendors to retailer was super interesting to me and powerful. And the amount of work getting done was impressive.
Yeah. Dana, if I could ask you, I mean, I talked to a lot of buyers who said it's really an efficient show for them, and they get work done like they don't get done at OR. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. It has been fantastic that way. At first, it's a little bit unnerving because all of a sudden it's quiet. And so you enter the show and you're like, well, is there really stuff going on? Because it's quieter. It's a quieter atmosphere. And there's not a whole bunch of noise and music and parties going on. And honestly, though, it's so much better though for getting work done. And you still do have a big camaraderie. So you still end up seeing people working together and networking, but it's a little bit easier for the buyer. I think sometimes it sets the vendors off a little bit because they're used to being able to see a whole bunch of stuff going on and people walking by and what's happening. And so it's a little bit more disconcerting for them. But for the buyer, it really helps with not having vendors being interrupted and distracted quite a bit when they're showing a line and saying hi to people and waving and people interrupting. And while that's always nice and fun, it's difficult to put together a line plan. So
yeah.
So I think that that's really huge. And for me, I actually don't buy for Summit Hut. We have 3 buyers that we call, but I still had 30 appointments when I was there. So it's one of the best business I've had because I get the full attention of the sales manager or the higher ups of the company, and we can really talk business and go over things that maybe I wouldn't be able to get that time at another show.
Brad, I don't mean to usurp your moderator role, but just a kind of a related question. For doing those kind of discussions, Dana, let's say it's a marketing campaign for the fall or training clinics, whatever else it might be. Do you find that the right people from the brands are at the GOA show, maybe in a way that they may or may not be here in Denver at the rep show or in South Carolina or some of the other regional rep shows? Do you find that the people you need to talk to about those topics are there?
Absolutely. I think it's even more so now than maybe 5 years ago. I think in the past, the people I'd want to talk to would fly in for half a day or a day, so it was a little bit tighter of a scheduling conflict. But I find now that the people I need to talk to are at the summit and connect shows. That's been super helpful because sometimes, for me to have a business meeting with a rep from the Southeast, there's not much usefulness there. It's not the people that can approve marketing or funding or things along those lines. So it's really nice to have that attention, I guess, and the one-on-one communication to really discuss true business plans and without having the distractions.
I believe that I had seen that, and it did impress me. I mean, Greg Thompson was there, and Peter Sachs, and Bruce Franks, and Fletcher was there, and a lot of the key people that you would need to deal with from the main brands. And so, to me, that's an indicator that GOA has really got some weight and some gravity and some momentum going. That is able to attract some principals.
Well, I think that it was a really important part for Grassroots to do that because originally it was a buying show, and then principals didn't want to come because they didn't have the people to talk to, and then sales managers didn't want to come because they didn't have the principals to talk to. So we worked hard on trying to bring both aspects of principals and sales managers together around the same times, and then revolve the education around it as well to make it worthwhile and valuable.
I was struck by a few things too. I mean, just being a visitor there, I had been there before, but the closed booths I think are very conducive to actually getting real work done. It made it a little bit harder to knock on doors and say hello to people that I just wanted to chit chat with, but I guess that's what makes it so productive too. I found that to be a really interesting part of this, and actually, in the end of the day, I think a very powerful part of it.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit of a positive and a negative part of that. I mean, I know even when I had an appointment, I didn't know if I didn't see the person I had an appointment with standing in their booth. I was like, well, should I go in? Should I not go in? Kind of thing. But I think we're all just kind of navigating these changes and how we want to deal with that. But I think the overall is such a productive positive that we'll start trying to figure out how to deal with some of the challenges.
Yeah. Rich, you and I were both responsible for doing some education sessions in the mornings. Do you have a sense for what the reception was for the ones that you and Craig did?
Oh, it's super positive for Compass and Nail. It was, I think, backing up from that a little, I think the thing that's really powerful is that the organization looked at itself, and you had the same thing going into the event. It said, what is the shared information that we feel the whole group needs, both on the retail side and on the vendor side? And there was a strategic intention to say, there are some skills and some messages we want to get across, and they asked us if we could help support that. And I thought it was powerful. And it wasn't, I think for me, the thing that was most interesting, what we were asked to do was to share our true experience and not craft it to the audience. It was like, hey, in a multi-channel environment, how does it work? We want to know more how it functions, what the real intention is, and not twist it so you think we'll like it. Don't modify the message. I'll tell you, it was incredibly nerve-wracking for me to stand in front of 70 people I've been friends and worked with for 20 years, 25 years, and to be like, here's how it is, and to have some really powerful discussions, and then secondarily to ask on the vendor side to say, look, in these situations, we have vendors that do an amazing job and we respect it, and we have vendors that don't do such a good job. Can you help them inform their process?
Yeah.
So I think the bigger thing is, yes, I think the retail members did an amazing job showing up. I mean, 70 retailers showed up at 7 a.m. I mean, I was barely there that first day, and
I was impressed with that.
It was unbelievable. And then the discussions I had, I think if we were more strategic as GOA was super strategic in the message they want to get across from the vendors, I think you could dictate attendance in a way and say, look, there's this one event, we have a shared resource, there's a message we want to get across to everybody. And I think that would be, because we would still get 30 people, 25 people on the vendor side. And it was really solid. I mean, they were great meetings and great discussions, but I think that piece, like, what do we want to deliver to the vendors? I heard a bunch of topics about what that could be,
right.
And we talked about volume-based discounts and what that does to businesses. And, like, I found that super interesting because that's a discussion I would love to get into, and like those kinds of things, I think could be very powerful moving forward.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that I wanted to ask about too, and Rich, you've been out of this loop for a year, so maybe this is more focused on Dana, or you can give your opinion. But I mean, there's been a lot of interest in the Connect portion of this, and we're in our second season of it. They've done one winter and one basically spring summer version. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, I think it's an interesting addition to the mix and brings a lot to the table, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to think.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's definitely from the retailer perspective. I think the whole point of doing Connect was to make sure that if the retailers are already there and we already flew there and we're set up to be there, then it's kind of like, let's see if we can get more work done by seeing more people. The summit has been a fantastic opportunity for retailers and vendors to get together, and a great way to place early orders. And yet we still have other people that are not part of Grassroots that we need to place orders with. And so if I can get our buyers there and we've already paid the expense to be there, then hey, if we can get more work done without them losing more days out of the office, flying here, flying there, or doing whatever, it certainly is a much big positive for us. And we were noticing vendors were doing the same thing because they wanted to see people that were in the area that were not part of Grassroots. They wanted to show them since they already had their lines. So I think that's how the whole thing came about.
Hey, and Brad, as we're talking, and maybe for people who view this future, I realize we haven't really succinctly defined what Grassroots is. Maybe I'll just take a quick swing briefly as I can. Grassroots is a buying group comprised of independent specialty outdoor retailers who are members by invitation, and there are some fairly rigorous qualifications in terms of the financial health of your business and so forth. The vendors that are part of the community are also there by invitation, so it's a bit of a curated group of vendors. It's not everybody. And when we refer to Summit versus Connect, again, a lot of people watching this probably know what this is about, but for anybody that doesn't, Summit is really that core original group of retailers and brands that are GOA membership. But this last year, GOA expanded that or added a second component, correct, Dana? With an additional list of retailers who are not GOA members at this point in time, and some additional brands to do sort of a secondary portion of the trade show.
Right, and it was still by invitation, and it was retailers that were invited are independent specialty.
Right.
It's such an interesting thing too. I mean, that adding the other retailers and the new retailers, I think it changed the dynamic. I think there's a noticeable change in the room. I mean, not necessarily negative, but there was to me, I experienced a very clear end between Summit and Connect, and a start of the next. And I think that was really well done, in changing the mood. But it also showed the benefit of being a Grassroots member is, because the days before were just that much different and that much more engaging in a certain sense. But Connect was also, in its own way, engaging, and the new people brought a lot of energy as well.
Yeah, it's definitely different. With Summit, we really work hard to have different interactions with our vendor partners or other retailers and really collaborate quite a bit together during meals. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together and have a lot of time. We have a happy hour together. And so we spend a lot more time together, kind of not in meetings, but collaborating and exchanging information. And so that kind of changes, is part of the big shift, I think, when we change over from Summit to Connect, because that is more of a traditional trade show.
And kind of to add some comedic value here, my favorite part of GOA this year was we had a active shooter SWAT event across the street, and all of us attendees were locked down in the convention center. But fortunately, it was exactly during happy hour.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it wasn't really an active shooter situation. It was a hoax. But
no, it was a hoax.
Yeah. So, that was a funny moment for sure. So, I guess that we're coming up to the end of the half hour here, and thank everyone for the time. But I wanted to ask one more question before we close here, and that's what's the 1-3-5 on this? 1 year, 3 year, 5 year out? I mean, fast forward to that time. How do you see the Grassroots Summit Connect evolving into that new landscape 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from now? It seems like it's well, I'll withhold my own ideas, but I'd love to hear from you what you think.
That's a big question, Brad.
It is.
I think that my biggest takeaway was the focus on meeting the needs of the buyers and the specialty retailers is what is most valuable, and not losing sight of that, because we know there's going to be a lot of pressure to morph it into something. And as long as it maintains that utility there, I think it's incredibly powerful. I think this focus on moving the entire industry along, yes, meeting the needs of the members, but also meeting the needs of the end user, like just doing a better job. And how can we get people into these activities, participating into these communities, and that focus is super important. And then, given those of you that know my near past, I think there's a great opportunity to create an opportunity for new brands in a curated way. So instead of just the fully established and fantastic brands that the organization's already working with, find a curated way, in a very efficient way, to introduce new concepts and ideas into the room. And I think that is something that could happen. So we're not just talking to those we already know, and let's talk to people we don't know, and let's get some fresh ideas and some new things going.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
But make it efficient. I don't know what that is. So, but I'll throw that out there. But I think that's super powerful. And as long as it meets the needs of the buyers and the stores and stays focused there, it'll continue to be successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Rich more. So I think he's absolutely right on. And it'll also be interesting to see what happens with, just specialty retail that are not part of Grassroots. I mean, some of the really small new startup retailers. And another aspect is the independent rep and how they might fit in with Grassroots and the other industry. So there's a lot of different interesting things that could come down the pike from that.
Reps do love the show. It was really interesting. Yeah,
I can see why. It's very efficient, and it's it's really who they need to see. It's all the A accounts that they may be doing showrooms with. It gets it all done in one format and allows the regional show to be a different slice of that. So I certainly see the benefit for reps as well.
Right.
So Jeff, I mean, what's your take? What's the 135 fast forward on this?
Well, I'll try to answer that, but I want to ask a question, if I could, of Dana. You know, we talked earlier about the inception of this group. It very much was kind of a collegial mind melding, sharing best practices and so forth. Do you feel like that element is as strong as it used to be, or could that be bolstered? I had a few people in my sessions that I led. I tried to get people talking to one another a lot, and a few people said, "Hey, that was really great. We should do more of that." And it made me wonder, has some of that slipped away?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting. From my perspective, it's actually better now than it was at the inception. Because while there was definitely a sharing of best practices, I think that back in the day, people held on more tightly to their information, because information was power, and it could always be lost, and everybody was a competitor to it. And now I think, especially retailers are more willing to share. And so I see that actually blossoming over the last 5 years, 10 years ago.
That's good.
I do think that when we get bigger, and as Grassroots has continued to expand, you do lose some of the intimacy and that feeling of trust, and then therefore some of the information sharing might not be as apt to do.
Yeah.
So it is a tough balance, and I think we've been working hard on trying to create smaller groups, even within Grassroots, to have a more intimate and more robust information sharing. So we've created some groups within called Grassroots Engage, and it's a stronger sharing of information and best practices. So I think that'll help us.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, the buying and planning portion is obviously the core. I mean, that's really what's going on. But at the same time, that's rather utilitarian. And it seems to me the real power of this collective, if I can use that word, is sharing best practice, is mind meld, is being able to sit down in little working groups and talk about, what are you guys going to do with the minimum wage going up to $15 an hour in your state? How are you dealing with that?
Absolutely. I mean,
stuff
I tell you
like
how many great conversations I've had as a result of just coming to Summit and knowing that I'd have opportunities to speak with other retailers going through similar problems, or I seek out someone who might be doing something better, either brick and mortar or online, that I can try to pick their brain. And then throw on top of that working with vendors in the similar fashion as well.
Right.
Definitely the largest value that we come out of Grassroots. Oh.
You're muted, Brad.
Oh.
I was brilliant too. Sorry, I can't repeat it. No, I was just saying I wanted to thank everybody. We're right at the half-hour mark here, so out of respect for your time and our viewers' time, we wanted to be sure we wrapped on time. But just in wrapping up, I Connect and the Summit were both phenomenal events. I mean, the takeaways were very collegial, very positive focus, positive vibe. The educational component, big part of it, but also the opportunity to network and share best practices. Rich, I think your takeaway, it's an event built around the retailer experience, and since consumers are really driving the ship here these days, the retailers are just that much closer to it. So it seems like a really, really good focus for getting business done. This very unique way to do this. So I was super pleased with having been a part of it. And thank you guys for joining us for this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks everybody.
All right. So we'll